watch your hands. You should watch your mouth. Bitches press. I mean, it's a mouth to mouth.
He's a French man.
French Canadian.
He's French Canadian, which is different. A lot different. Certainly the climate is. But up first, we have a special guest. Kshama Sawant is with us, back on the show. She's a socialist politician, economist. She served at the Seattle City Council from 2014 to 2024. She was the first and only member of the Socialist Alternative Party to date to be elected to public office. On Saturday, February 22nd, this is why I'm having her on so she could talk about this. She and her organization on February 22nd, her organization called Workers Strike Back, they're going to have a organizing conference in Seattle that will also feature Chris Hedges and Jill Stein. So that's on February 22nd. Welcome back to the show, Kshama Sawant.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, so can you give us an update? I know your mother's ill in India and they wouldn't give you a visa. Could you tell us what's going on with that?
Yes, as some of your viewers might know, India's government is headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. They are a right-wing reactionary Hindu fundamentalist regime, and there's been wide-scale repression of protest movements of people who are critical of the regime. And one of the mechanisms that they're using to attack their critics in terms of political retaliation is to either deny visas to visit India or to revoke long-standing visas or revoke residency status. And that's what they're doing against me. And it's obvious why they're doing this, because my office, when I was on the city council, my office passed a resolution. That was the first ever resolution condemning some really horrendous so-called citizenship laws that Modi had passed at the time. This was in 2020. These were anti-Muslim, anti-poor citizenship laws. And then in 2023, my office, alongside a movement here, passed a historic ban on caste-based discrimination, which is widespread in the United States among, in the Indian community, in the tech sector especially. And so all of this has angered the Modi regime, and they're engaging in political retaliation. I mean, a consulate official actually told me that they have a reject list. In other words, he admitted that there is a blacklist that the Modi administration maintains and that I'm on that blacklist.
So, and that's it? So you don't have any avenues to try to get this fixed?
But if you look at what's happening to others as well, for example, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have documented at least 100 people that they know of, I think it's many more than that, who have been either denied visas or have had their residency or other long-standing visa status revoked. And so I think when you have a situation, as you do in India right now, where much of the state institutions, the media, all the powerful people, I mean, the Modi administration represents the billionaire class, just like Trump and Biden represent the billionaire class. And so when you have all these powerful entities in lockstep with this reactionary regime, that regime gets emboldened to continue attacking in this draconian manner. So our only hope, and it's not just about me, it's others as well who are being retaliated against. I think our only option is to get organized in a working class movement, and ultimately it has to be an international working class movement. And we showed a small but important example of it. I don't know how many of your viewers have seen. When we went to the consulate last, my husband and I, we engaged in civil disobedience alongside other of our fellow workers strike back activists, peaceful civil disobedience. We're going to need that type of mass civil disobedience. We're going to need that on a mass scale. We need mass protest movements and mass strike actions.
Okay, well, I wanted to, I like that flyer there, fight the rich and their two parties, and the wars, that's important. Medicare for all, I'm a big backer of Medicare for all. Stop mass deportations, tax Amazon. And is Amazon not taxed?
Amazon is taxed thanks to our fighting strategy. Actually, last year alone, the Amazon tax that we won in 2020, last year alone, it raised $450 million by taxing Amazon and other big corporations. But the reason we say tax Amazon there is, first of all, in Seattle, that's not enough. We're going to need far more because the crisis is so acute. But also, this is a call to action for nationally for working class people. So the organizing conference that we are hosting is going to be in Seattle, but the organizing conference is for working people nationwide to get organized. And I should say, the reason we're doing this and the reason it is left to Workers Strike Back, it's a small organization, but it's a very important organization. And I would say it's historic work because it is happening in the absence of any fighting strategy or any strategy whatsoever being presented by the labor leadership, by any of these mass NGO organizations, let alone by the Democratic Party. And in fact, that's why we say fight the rich and their two parties, because I think it is really, really important for working people to understand you could not have illusions in Biden and you cannot have illusions in Trump. In reality, both these parties, including Trump, despite his idiosyncrasies, represent the billionaire class. And we have to unite, and that's part of the call to action that we're doing in this organizing conference. As part of our message is that we don't care whether you voted for Harris or you voted for Jill Stein or you voted for Trump or you didn't vote at all. I mean, tens of millions of people didn't vote at all, which is completely understandable. But what we want is principled unity on the basis of understanding that regardless of whom you voted for, if you understand that neither of these parties represents us and that we need an independent fighting alternative, then this conference is for you. One of the calls to action we're making is that we need to build mass movements, mass strike actions, mass civil disobedience, all of that. Also, part of that has to be a call to build a new party for working people, because both these existing parties are parties of capitalism and we cannot put our faith in either of them.
So, I did a story a couple of weeks ago where the head of the dock workers union, the port deal that was just reached between the owners and the union, and it's a great deal for the port. They credit Trump. They say that he sided with the workers and he threatened the port owners, and they put a big their front page of their website was thanking Donald Trump, saying that he was the best friend that their union had ever had. Are you aware of that story? And is that just like a one-off, or what do you think happened there?
Yes, I have heard about that, of course. And what happened there is that it's very important. I mean, there's all kinds of lessons there. The first point, of course, is that dock workers have enormous leverage because they are workers who work in what I would call strategic choke points of the economy. So in other words, if dock workers, just like Amazon workers or UPS workers, if they went on a massive strike action, that would help shut down the entire economy. It would shut down the profit machine of the capitalist class, and they had that kind of leverage. And I think the longshore union leaders, they used that leverage in a limited fashion, and in that sense, that pressure was primarily, just in terms of timing, was on the Biden administration, and that they had already won some leverage on that basis. And the writing was on the wall that they were going to win some crucial gains on that basis. And in reality, I would say that it wasn't so much Trump doing it. It's more that the workers had built-in leverage and they exercised that leverage. Although in my view, they should have gone much farther. They should have actually gone on a strike action. And then fundamentally, I will say, I don't agree with any of the labor leaders who now are paying respect to Trump, saying that Trump is different than Biden. In reality, he's not. I don't agree with Sean O'Brien, the president of the Teamsters, who is going closer and closer to Donald Trump. I think that would be a historic and absolutely disastrous mistake for the labor movement to put any faith in Trump and the Republican Party any more than it would be sensible to put our faith in the Democratic Party, because ultimately they are going to stab us in the back. We saw what happened in the Reagan era as well. The air traffic controllers, PATCO, the union at that time, they were justifiably angry at Jimmy Carter because Jimmy Carter also sold out union workers, and we saw the famous sellout of the truck workers at that time. And so they were justifiably angry at Carter and the Democrats, and they decided to put their eggs in the Reagan basket. Reagan made all kinds of empty promises. And what happened? One of the first actions that Reagan did was this brutal, absolutely brutal attack on the air traffic controllers. He broke the back of that union, and there was not an attack on just that union. That was Reagan and the whole capitalist, neoliberalism at the time, sending a message to the international labor movement, and Thatcher was doing the same thing across the Atlantic, that we are going to go under massive attack on you. And it was like a declaration of war. And so I think it is important for us to take these historic lessons and understand that neither of these parties stands on our side. Trump does not. Trump is happy to take easy rhetorical gains by taking shots at Biden, which, oftentimes that will be based on the truth, because Biden is no friend of working people either. He broke the railroad worker strike. Unfortunately, Bernie Sanders, AOC, all of these people have sold us out. So my point is not that Democrats are better. My point is that neither of these parties is going to represent us ever. And so it is a fool's errand to put our faith in any of them. So,
you talk about that the port workers had all this leverage, but didn't the railroad workers also had this, if not more, certainly equal leverage, because the railroad system is the glue that makes capitalism run in this country. And so why do you think they couldn't? Is it just because the Biden administration was so against them? And of course, the whole Democratic Party voted to break that strike. Is that what happened? Why was it so favorable for the port workers and the railroad workers just got crushed?
I think it was a difference in strategy. And even though I might have disagreements with the port workers' leadership, there was a significant difference in strategy. And it was really ultimately the strategy that the railroad workers union leaders used. was completely disastrous. I mean, it sold the workers down the river. And what they did was allow basically the union leaders, by refusing to go on strike, by using legalistic arguments that, oh, we are, under law, we are prohibited and so on and so forth. They refused to go on strike. And because of that, they gave a serious opening to Biden and the Democrats to sell them out. And also what happened at that time, and this is something that, unfortunately, I was one of the few public figures who called this out, that AOC and Pramila Jayapal and all these so-called progressive Democrats, including the squad members, they gave the Biden administration cover to break the railroad workers' strike by doing this. I mean, it's too long of a story to go into it, but the sort of a sleight of hand mechanism that they used in Congress in order to sell out the railroad workers. So yes, Biden was and is virulently anti-labor. The Democratic Party is anti-labor, but unfortunately, so is Trump. Trump didn't do anything for the longshore workers. The longshore workers themselves, I mean, the leadership had a slightly better strategy, so we should credit them, not Trump. I mean, look at Trump's record. In his first term, Trump's tax cuts, they hurt working people dramatically. I mean, 98% of those tax benefits were for big business and the rich, and the vast majority of working people were hurt. They did not gain. And so corporate tax cuts, whether they're from Republicans or Democrats, will always hurt working people. Trump does not support Medicare for all. He does not support a $15 minimum wage, much less the $25 an hour minimum wage that Workers' Strike Back is fighting for. But neither do the Democrats. I mean, Biden betrayed his promises on $15 an hour, canceling student debt, and a public healthcare option. I mean, one of the things, just to explain, the relationship of all of this analysis with the conference we are organizing, is that one of the proposals that I want to bring forward to this conference, obviously there'll be discussion and debate there, but I think that the moment is ripe for us to carry out ballot initiative battles on Medicare for all. So in fact, concretely, we are looking into, Workers' Strike Back and I and my organization, Revolutionary Workers, we are looking into the possibility of carrying out a ballot initiative option in a city level or a state level on Medicare for all. The point being that we cannot hold our breath for either the Democrats or the Republicans to pass anything like this. In fact, it is guaranteed, it is absolutely guaranteed that both of them will be completely opposed to anything close to Medicare for all. I mean, who have been the gatekeepers against any kind of serious public option, let alone single payer healthcare? It's been the Democrats and the Republicans both. So I think we have to be very clear about that.
Oh, no doubt. You're completely correct about that. I mean, we were both on the same side of forced to vote, and that was a big eye opener for a lot of people. A lot of people turned on me over that, and people like the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, which is a completely co-opted organization by the deep state, and they're there just to serve as an arm of the Democratic Party. But so what would you say if a worker who voted for Trump, was interested in your organization, and then they see, because this was from Reuters, they say that the ILA leaders, which is the Port Workers Union, Harold and Dennis Daggett, they called Trump a hero to the union and gave him full credit for the resolution of their talks. So is that why?
I'll say this. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I'm glad you're asking this question because it helps clarify, Jimmy. The thing is, I don't trust a labor leader praising Trump any more than I trust a labor leader praising Biden or Harris or the Democrats. So it is an equal opportunity liar kind of situation. They're both lying. They're both misleading the working class, and we have to condemn both those things. So in other words, my criticism, and I don't hold back, as you know, my criticism of Sean O'Brien for cozying up to Trump is trenchant, but just as trenchant is my critique of Sean Fain cheerleading Kamala Harris at the Democratic National Convention shamefully, and then now turning around and publishing an op-ed in the Washington Post saying, I am ready to work for Trump, work with Trump. These are both, these ideas that are peddled by these labor leaders, they are both snake oil salesmen, and we have to reject both because both of them are going to sell us down the river. I mean, union leaders declaring Democrats to be heroes and union leaders declaring Trump to be heroes, they are both being dishonest. When working people do win victories, it is because the rank and file end up fighting back because they are angry. And so, in terms of Trump voters, I know a lot of people watching this might have voted for Trump or might have been tempted to vote for Trump or maybe didn't vote at all. That's why we're saying that it doesn't matter to us whom you voted for, because that was a very limited option kind of scenario. And a lot of people were unfortunately tempted by looking at Trump as a real alternative. I mean, he in my view, he's a con man. He presented himself as a friend of working people. But in reality, if you look at what his policies are, they are all anti-worker. So I would urge everybody who wants to fight for Medicare for all, who wants to fight for a $25 an hour minimum wage, who wants to see an end to the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and wants to end US military funding for all these wars, including in Ukraine, then you should join us. Even if you're not in Seattle, you can watch the organizing conference on live stream, and I would urge people to join Workers Strike Back.
So Trump proposed. So I'm just trying to think of how your organization, which is a much needed organization, right, for workers to come together, how it could reach out to, because the parties have flipped, right? So the Democratic Party got more big money, got more dark money, and the more wealthier people as a percentage voted for Democrats, then voted. So more workers and blue collar people actually voted for Trump. And I think a lot of that is because they don't have anywhere else to go. And but Trump did his proposal to take the tax off of tipped wages, which I thought was politically a brilliant stroke. You would support that, correct?
Absolutely. Any relief for tipped workers or workers as a whole is to be welcomed. But here's what I would warn. I don't see Trump delivering on anything like that. As you said, it was a ploy. It was an election ploy, just like Biden promised he's going to pass $15 an hour. So I think we have to be able to see these election year ploys by both Republicans and Democrats. We should not, I'm serious, we should not fall for this idea that Trump is somehow fundamentally different than the Democrats. He is not. He is different than them in the sense that he is not, he's not a predictable and going in line always kind of stooge of the capitalist class. He does his own thing sometimes, but ultimately he's a billionaire himself. Look at whom he is surrounded by, Jimmy. He's surrounded by the richest man in the world and other billionaires. You've seen all these supposedly Democratic leaning billionaires like Mark Andreessen and Mark Zuckerberg and others all go over to Trump. So he's surrounded by billionaires as much as Biden was surrounded by billionaires. And if 4 years from now a Democrat is elected, they will still be surrounded by billionaires. You just saw Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, go to Silicon Valley saying he wants to, quote unquote, mend fences with the billionaire class. When was the last time the Democrats or the Republicans ever came to working people and poor people saying, we want to mend fences with you? At the end of the day, we have to rely on independent organizing, meaning independent of both these parties. We have to base ourselves on what we can organize. And I want to be clear, we have to have illusions in neither party. I mean, just to give you a clear idea, those of your viewers who may not know about our work on the city council between 2014 and 2023, we won the $15 an hour minimum wage. We were the first major city to win that. And that wage is now $20.76 starting January. So it's the highest minimum wage in the nation. We won the Amazon tax, as we talked about. We won a whole host of renters' rights. What did the Democrats do? I don't talk about Republicans in Seattle because they're not really a big force. It's the Democratic Party that runs the political show here. So they represent big business. So at every step of the way, I would not have won any of these victories alongside working people had I not used my office as a vehicle to build those movements. And you have seen Bernie Sanders, AOC, none of these people willing to use their much more prominent offices. I mean, they have congressional and senatorial offices. They could do what I did 100 times over, but they are not going to, because ultimately they are part of a party that represents the interests of the capitalist class. And right now, you know what the Democrats did last year in Seattle? They tried to undermine by legislation. They didn't succeed because we defeated them. Workers Strike Back defeated them, but they tried to undermine our $15 an hour minimum wage. And had they succeeded, they would have ensured that tens of thousands of workers would have lost, the $20.76, the full minimum wage increase. We defeated them. We said any Democrat voting for this, we're going to, they deserve to be brought down. So that's the kind of fighting strategy we need. But my point is that you need that fighting strategy against both the Democrats and Republicans. We cannot afford to have illusions in either. And, we should ask questions. Those of you who voted for Trump, you should ask questions to yourself. If Trump is pro-worker, why is he preparing to attack Medicare and Medicaid? If he is pro-working class families, why is he going after, in a draconian way, funding for education by going after the Department of Education and Department of Public Education? Why is he going after the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau by saying that this is the deep state, this is government? So, I mean, I am a socialist. I want to overthrow capitalism. I am not peddling any kind of faith in any kind of federal institution in any way whatsoever. But if you look at what he's attacking the meager protections that working people have. I mean, working people should understand, what did the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau do in 2022? They went after Wells Fargo. In 2023, they went after Bank of America. In 2024, they went after Apple and Goldman Sachs. And these were just fines. I mean, they were fined to the tune of hundreds of millions or in some cases billions of dollars. So it was hardly what we need. But the point is that these are meager protections for working people against these big banks. These are Wall Street billionaires. These are rapacious, plundering entities that target ordinary people, poor people, working class people, elderly people on junk fees and denying them the rewards they have earned on credit cards. I mean, they go after the little people in such shameful ways, and they make hundreds of billions of dollars for themselves. So we have to be very clear who they are.
So I've talked about that a little. I'm going to talk about it more. I think most people I know, anyway, support the defunding of USAID because that's just the CIA, and that's about overthrowing governments and things. But then they shoehorn in the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, and that's actually a good thing. Like you've just been describing, that they actually fight back against the big banks and they fight for the little guy. And so so Elon and Trump are conflating those two things. And so I think that's I'm going to do my best to try to make people realize that those aren't the same thing, as they're trying to conflate that. But the weird thing was for me was that sure, go ahead.
To clarify, you may not agree with me, but yes, I mean, we should clarify those things. But even in the case of US aid, in my view, the reality of what they are doing, I mean, these are nefarious people. Donald Trump, Elon Musk. I mean, these are arch enemies of any decent idea of what society should be for for working people. So as far as US aid is concerned, yes, of course, US aid has been peddling sort of what they call regime change, basically CIA operations against working class or other left revolutions. We know what they did, supporting the Saudi Arabia regime against people in Yemen. That is all true. And I should mention the hateful Samantha Power. She has been under Obama. Of course, you've talked about her on your show. So again, we don't have, and we should not have illusions. Any of these. Samantha Power is a peddler of war and bloodshed. We should be very clear. However, my point is this, that in my view, what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing with US aid is not that they are going to stop the CIA type of operations against working people's movements in other countries. They will do it. My claim is that they will do it in another fashion. It will be under, it won't be visible probably to us. It'll be some sort of covert operation. Many of CIA's operations have been covert. But what they are going after, in my view, what they're actually going after is the billions of dollars in actual aid to very, very desperately poor people in many desperate regions around the world. Now, again, as a socialist, I don't think that we can solve the problems of poverty and misery in the world by USAID being propped up. My point is that you can't have illusions in what Trump's actual agenda is.
Right. Were you just as disappointed in me because, you talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, which Elizabeth Warren was the champion of, right? And then to see her do such a underhanded, to oppose RFK Jr.'s HHS, it was just despicable the way she was trying to make him, he's sued corporations his whole career, right? He got the Hudson River cleaned up. He's been suing chemical companies and huge polluters and General Electric and Big Pharma. And he's won over and over. He's won against Big Pharma. And she tried to make that sound like a bad thing. And she tried to get him to admit to stop suing Big Pharma. And so I couldn't square that circle with she's supposed to be supporting the Consumer Protection Finance. And then she's doing that. It was real, and Bernie Sanders did the same thing. It just, that was just them doing the bidding of power on parade. I was just, I don't know. You could comment on that if you'd like.
Oh, Elizabeth Warren is a fraud. She's a long-time fraud. We saw. You're talking about RFK, and I think we might have some differences, you and I, on what RFK is doing, and we can talk about that at some point. But your essential point about Warren is, I think, the more relevant one here, which is that she has always been a fraud. Look at how she went after Bernie Sanders in 2016. Remember her whole campaign, the raison d'etre, the whole objective of her candidacy was to help bring down Bernie Sanders. So in other words, she is one of the countless people who carry water for the capitalist class, and we should not have illusions in her either. And AOC is now an arch water carrier for them as well. And so when we look at, okay, what is it that working people need to do in order to get organized? One of the main questions, in fact, you can't build successful movements if you're not able to answer this question correctly. And this is part of why we have succeeded so historically in our efforts as socialists in Seattle, and the question is, do you understand who working class people's enemies are? If you don't understand, if you can't answer that question accurately, then it will, you will end up being defeated. And so not only should we understand that Democrats and Republicans, the top Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and top Republicans like Donald Trump and
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell, all of them, they may not have differences amongst themselves, but they all agree on their pro-capitalist agenda. So they are obviously our enemies. And obviously before that, the billionaire class themselves are our enemies. So billionaires, multimillionaires, that's where it starts. Then the top Democrats and Republicans. But then you can't stop there. Then it is all these people, and these are some of the most nefarious entities, because they look progressive, they sound progressive, they act like they're on your side, but their real purpose is to deflect away from, to take working class anger towards, just vote blue, Democratic Party, don't build working class movements. And so that's the role of the squad members. Elizabeth Warren, of course, I mean, she's just rotten. And then you have the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I mean, there's 100 members in the Congressional Progressive Caucus. The chair is Pramila Jayapal. Her role is to deflect working people's movements away from actually what could succeed, which is building independent movements. And then we also have to keep in mind who else is not on our side. Most of the NGO leaders, most of the labor leadership, they are all carrying water for the Democratic Party. DSA, you mentioned the DSA leadership. So it's all like it's a pipeline of people who peddle snake oil, and working people cannot have illusions in any of them.
Well, so February 22nd is the Workers Strike Back. I was holding a big rally. So in Seattle, everybody, do you have what's your website that I can point people to?
So if people can go to Workers Strike Back, all one word, workersstrikeback.org, you'll find the registration form for the organizing conference on the homepage itself. And like I said, if you're anywhere in driving distance of Seattle, please come in person. We want you there in person. But if you can't, then join us on the live stream and join Workers Strike Back itself.
And I just, would just say it's, as Christian Smalls did when he organized the first Amazon Workers Union, I've been involved with several organizing efforts, and he did it the right way. He got all types of people together. I mean, there's lots of MAGA voters on Staten Island, and he's a black guy who got them to organize around class issues and that we share a common enemy. And he didn't muck it up with identity politics, which is what a lot of people do, like Code Pink. When we were doing an anti-war rally, they wouldn't speak because they didn't like some of the speakers' views on LGBTQ. And I'm like, that's the equivalent of saying, yeah, I'd like to stop a nuclear war, but not with those people. And that's the opposite of what organizing is. Organizing is when you find common ground with people you disagree with vehemently on other topics, but you can work together on one. And the big thing is an economic issue. So if your organization is built around economic issues and class struggle, that's going to be a winning message. And if you can, I just hope that you can resist the infiltrate, because the deep state, as Christian Parenti has taught us on our show, that the deep state likes to insert identity politics to try to split up working coalitions. And so my best to you.
Can I just quickly say a few words about that?
You know what? I have another guest. I'm already 6 minutes over, but I'd love to have you back on and we can talk more about it.
Okay.
Is that good? Okay. Shama Sawant, thank you so much. And I'm really a big supporter of your work, and I wish I could be there. I'm going to be on tour, or else I would be at that rally in Seattle. But good luck, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Hey, if you're watching this show, chances are you already know the mainstream media is full of crap. They're not here to inform you. They're here to spin stories, cater to corporate overlords, and protect the establishment at all costs. So just take a look at how they covered or didn't cover leaked photos linking Joe Biden to Hunter Biden's Chinese business partners. I ran the story through Ground News, who found nearly 100 sources reporting on it, and coverage is totally lopsided. Independent right-wing outlets are all over this, calling it what it is: proof Biden's been lying. Meanwhile, everyone else is just regurgitating CNN talking points, downplaying it like it's no big deal. Ground News even lets me see how many other publications have reposted the story from CNN. Let me ask you this. If the media is bending over backwards to protect Biden's image, even on his way out, how can we trust them to cover anything fairly? Well, the answer is you can't. The only way for us to cut through this media bias is to objectively compare how the same story is being reported across other media outlets. That's why I can't recommend my partners at Ground News enough. They're the only platform not telling you what to think. They show you every angle of every news story, whether it's from corporate media, independent outlets, or voices the establishment doesn't want you to hear. They expose who's funding each perspective and if they've got a political bias. They've even have a blind spot feed to expose what the other side of the political spectrum isn't reporting on, freeing readers of any hidden agendas and political spins. And if you want to cut through the BS of mainstream media, you can save 40% today off their top-tier Advantage plan by going to ground.news/JD or scanning my QR code. If you like the show, I think you'll love that platform.